The arena shook with the sound of alien drums. Thousands of voices echoed together, chanting in a strange language. The air was heavy with smoke and bright fire, torches burning in circles around the high stage. Tonight was the ceremony of chains, a tradition older than the city itself. On the stage stood warriors, tall reptilian soldiers with shining armor, insect-like fighters with sharp claws, and even massive beastmen carrying blood-stained axes. They had all fought in the war against the border tribes, and tonight they would be rewarded, not with gold, not with land, but with living prizes. In the center of the stage stood a line of chained figures, alien girls, trembling, their wrists bound with glowing cuffs. Each one lowered her eyes to the ground, as if they had learned long ago not to hope. The crowd cheered, waiting for the next champion to step forward. Then the horn blew. From the far gate, the human walked into the arena. His boots echoed against the stone floor. The crowd fell silent for a moment, staring. A human, rare among them, yet respected for his strength. He had fought with them, bled with them, and tonight, he was chosen to receive the highest reward. The announcer's voice thundered, "Behold the victor! The human who crushed the enemy's line. For his honor, a gift most sacred." The guards yanked a girl forward from the line. She was slender, with pale silver skin that caught the torchlight. Her hair was long, falling in tangled waves over her shoulders. Her eyes, a deep violet, were filled with silent fear. The crowd roared. They expected the human to smile, to raise his prize before them, but he did not. The girl stumbled as the chains pulled her closer to him. She dared not look at his face. She had been chosen before, always as a prize, always as a thing to be owned. She braced herself for another master, another cage, but when she reached him, she heard no command, no cruel laugh, instead silence. The human looked down at her, his jaw tight, his eyes sharp but calm. Slowly he shook his head. "I will not take her." His voice carried through the arena. The announcer froze, the guards blinked in confusion. The crowd gasped, then murmured, then hissed. Had they heard correctly? The announcer cleared his throat and tried again. "Perhaps the human does not understand. This is honor. She is his prize, his property." But the human's voice grew louder, stronger. "She is not property," he said. "She is a person, not a reward." The words echoed through the fire-lit arena like thunder. The chained girl raised her head in shock, her violet eyes meeting his for the first time. No one had ever spoken such words before. Not in this place. The crowd erupted. Some jeered. Some shouted in rage. Others sat stunned in silence. Never in memory had anyone rejected the ceremony of chains. The guards stepped forward, their weapons ready. One snarled, "Take what is given, human, or be punished as an insult to the throne." The human did not move. He stood tall, his shoulders squared, his gaze locked on the trembling girl beside him. "I do not want a slave," he said again, calm but firm. "I want no chains on my hands, nor on hers." The alien leaders sitting on high thrones leaned forward, their faces twisted with anger and confusion. One of them hissed, "Do you dare defy our tradition? You will break the ceremony, you will insult our honor." But the human only stared back. "If honor means chains on the innocent," he said slowly, "then your honor is worthless." The crowd gasped again. Some covered their mouths. Others shouted curses. Guards rushed closer, surrounding him and the girl. The girl's heart raced. She had never seen anyone stand against them like this, never seen courage like this. For a moment time froze. The drums had stopped. The fire crackled softly, and in that silence, the human placed his hand gently on the girl's shoulder. She flinched at the touch, expecting cruelty, but his grip was light, steady, protective. Her violet eyes widened with something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The announcer's voice trembled. This cannot be allowed. No warrior may reject the gift." But the human raised his voice, cutting him off. "Then take back your gift," he said coldly. "I will not use her like a slave." The arena shook again, not from drums this time, but from the roar of the crowd, half in fury, half in awe. The leaders signaled the guards, "Take him," and return the girl to her chains. The guards closed in, their weapons glowing. The human tightened his jaw, his muscles ready. Beside him, the girl whispered, her voice so soft it barely carried through the chaos. Why are you doing this?" The human looked at her, his expression fierce but kind. "Because no one deserves chains," he said, and in that moment, with guards circling and thousands of eyes upon him, the story of rebellion began. The arena was no longer a place of celebration. It had turned into a storm of voices, anger, and disbelief. The human stood tall in the middle of it, calm but unshaken, while the chained alien girl clung to silence beside him. Her violet eyes flicked nervously between the guards, the roaring crowd, and the man who had just done the impossible. The announcer's face was pale, his voice trembling as he shouted, "He refuses! He refuses the sacred gift." The words echoed like thunder across the great stone walls. The crowd's reaction split in half. Some screamed for punishment. Others whispered in shock. No one could understand why a human, an outsider, would reject such honor. The guards pressed closer, their weapons glowing faintly with blue energy. One of them hissed, "Kneel and accept her, human, or your blood will wash these stones." But the human did not kneel. He raised his voice, steady, clear. "I will not claim her. I will not own her. She is not a prize." The girl's chest tightened, her breath sharp. No one had ever said those words in this place before. Her chains rattled as she tried to step back, unsure if this was real. She had lived too long as property to believe in miracles. From the high thrones, the alien nobles leaned forward, their jeweled robes glimmering in the torchlight. Their leader, an elder with a crown of bone and steel, slammed his staff against the ground. "Human, you shame our tradition. You insult our throne. This girl is yours to use, yours to command, yet you refuse?" The human's gaze rose to the throne, his jaw tight. "Your throne sits on chains and misery," he said firmly. "I will not bow to it." The arena gasped, as if the entire city had taken one sharp breath together. The girl's eyes widened, her trembling lips parted. Could someone really speak against them like this and live? The guards circled tighter, blades ready, but the alien leader raised his hand to hold them back. There was curiosity in his cruel eyes, mixed with anger. "Why, human?" the leader asked, his voice low but heavy. "Why would you refuse what others would kill for? She is beautiful, she is yours, and yet you spit on the gift?" The human looked down at the girl. She stood small, silver skin glowing faintly in the firelight, her body shaking from fear. He saw not a prize, not a reward, but a person frightened, scarred, trapped. "Because freedom is worth more than beauty," he answered, his voice loud enough for all to hear. "Because no one deserves chains." The crowd roared again, some furious, others in awe. The alien nobles on the throne exchanged sharp glances. One of them whispered, "He is dangerous. His words are poison, they will spread." Another snarled, "Then crush him now before the seed grows." The leader slammed his staff once more. "Very well, human, if you refuse, then you insult us. Guards, take him down. Put the girl back in her cage." The girl froze, her violet eyes wide as the guards moved forward again. This time, with no hesitation, she knew what would happen. He would be cut down. She would be dragged back to her prison, and this moment of light would vanish forever. Her heart screamed at her to speak, but her voice was locked by years of silence. The human raised his fists, ready to fight. But before the clash began, a strange sound rippled through the arena. A voice from the crowd shouted, "Let him speak!" Another joined, "No chains." And then another, "Freedom!" The nobles looked stunned. Whispers and shouts spread through the audience like fire catching dry wood. For the first time in living memory, the ceremony of chains was not one voice. It was divided. The human had broken something deep. The leader's face twisted in fury. "Silence them. Crush this fool before his words turn to rebellion," he roared. The guards lunged forward. Weapons raised, the human braced himself, his eyes scanning for a way out. But at his side, something unexpected happened. The chained girl stepped forward. Her chains clattered as she moved in front of him, her small form trembling but defiant. She lifted her voice, hoarse but clear. He does not own me. He refuses, but he does not hurt me." The crowd fell silent again. It was rare for the slaves to speak, rarer still for them to defy the silence of fear. The alien nobles shouted angrily, but the people were listening. The girl's violet eyes shone with something new, courage borrowed from the human strength. The leader snarled, "Enough of this. Bind him, silence her, end this farce." The guards rushed in with full force, blades flashing in the firelight. The human clenched his fists, muscles burning, ready for battle, but inside him was no fear, only resolve. He knew the moment he refused, his path had changed forever, and as the girl stood beside him, fragile but unbroken, he understood something deeper. This fight was no longer about refusing a prize. It was about refusing a system built on chains. The drums began to beat again, faster, louder, signaling war inside the arena itself. The refusal had lit the spark, and soon everything would burn. The moment the leader shouted for his capture, the arena exploded into chaos. Guards surged forward, weapons humming with deadly energy, their armored boots slamming against the stone. The crowd screamed, half in rage, half in excitement, as if they had never seen such defiance before. The human's eyes darted quickly around the stage, searching for a way out. He could not fight an army head-on, not here, not now, but he also knew, if they caught him, the girl would vanish forever back into chains. That thought alone gave him strength. The first guard swung a glowing spear, but the human caught it with both hands, twisting hard. The weapon slipped free, and he drove its shaft into the guard's chest. Knocking him down, another guard lunged, blade raised high. The human ducked, slammed his fist into the alien's side, then kicked him into the fire pit at the edge of the stage. The chained girl stumbled back, her violet eyes wide. Her breath caught in her throat. She had never seen someone fight for her before. Her whole life. Battles were fought around her, but she was only ever the prize, never the reason. And now this human bled, risked everything. For her, stay close, the human shouted, his voice cutting through the roar of the arena. She nodded shakily, the chains rattling as she hurried behind him. The guards pressed harder. Forming a circle, the announcer screamed, "Seize them both!" But the human moved like lightning, striking, dodging, grabbing weapons from the fallen. Each blow was fast, brutal, precise. Earthborn training clashing against alien strength. Still more poured in. The girl tugged at his arm, her voice trembling. "There's a way, a hidden passage." Her eyes flicked toward the edge of the stage, where the shadows of the arena wall curved down into the ground. "The slaves use it to clean the tunnels," she whispered quickly. The human's jaw tightened. "Show me," he said with the guards closing in. He swung the stolen spear one last time. Clearing a gap, together they dashed across the stage, their footsteps echoing under the chants of thousands. The girl guided him to the far corner, where a crack in the stone wall led downward. "Barely noticeable unless you knew it was there, go," the human urged, pushing her toward it. She hesitated only for a breath, then slipped inside the narrow passage. The human followed. Just as a spear stabbed the wall where he had been standing, sparks flew, stone cracked, but they were gone, swallowed by the shadows. The tunnel was damp, cold, lit only by faint crystals embedded in the walls. The girl ran barefoot, chains clinking, her silver skin almost glowing in the darkness. The human's heavy steps followed close, his breath steady but fierce behind them. Shouts echoed. Guards had seen the passage, and they were coming fast. The sound of armored boots rattled like thunder through the narrow walls. "We can't outrun them for long," the human muttered. "There's another way," the girl said, pointing ahead. Her voice was nervous, but she knew these tunnels. She had walked them in secret. Many times when I was dragged to clean here. I counted the turns, the doors. I remember. Her words made the human glance at her. Impressed. "You're smarter than they ever knew," he said. She blinked at him, startled by the rare kindness, then looked away, her cheeks warming despite the danger. The tunnel forked into two paths. Without pause, she pointed left. "This one leads to the city streets, hidden under the market," she whispered. The human nodded and followed her lead behind them. The guards' shouts grew louder, closer. Suddenly the tunnel shook, a spear of energy shot past, striking the wall, exploding rock into dust. The girl screamed, stumbling, but the human caught her arm, pulling her forward. "No stopping," he growled. "We keep moving." At last they burst out into the night air. They stood in the shadows of a crowded alien marketplace, its stalls glowing with strange lights, vendors shouting in alien tongues. No one noticed them at first, just another pair lost in the chaos of the city. But the chains on the girl's wrists glowed too bright, marking her instantly. The human tore a cloak from a stall, tossing a handful of stolen coins on the counter. He wrapped it around her shoulders, hiding the chains. "Keep your head down," he ordered. She obeyed, her heart pounding, her mind spinning. Was this freedom? Was this what it felt like? But their escape was not yet safe. From the arena, alarm horns blared, echoing across the city sky. The crowd of the market turned restless, whispers spreading. Everyone knew what it meant. The ceremony had been broken. The girl clutched the cloak tighter, her violet eyes scanning the streets. "They will hunt us everywhere," she whispered. The human's jaw tightened, his hand gripping the stolen spear. Then we'll give them a chase they'll never forget, he said. Behind them, armored figures began to appear at the edge of the market. Scanning, searching. The hunters had been unleashed. The girl's chains rattled as she clenched her fists. For the first time in years, she felt something inside her awaken, not just fear, but the spark of defiance because she was no longer alone. And in the heart of the alien city, with horns blaring and hunters spreading through the streets, the great escape had only just begun. The market was alive with noise and light. But underneath the ordinary chaos, something darker moved. The alarm horn still echoed through the air, rattling windows and sending shivers down the spines of every citizen. Everyone knew what it meant. The ceremony had been broken. The human had defied the throne, and now, hunters would scour every street until he and the chained girl were found. The human kept the stolen cloak tight around her shoulders, shielding the glow of her cuffs as best he could. "Walk steady," he whispered. "Not too fast. Not too slow." The girl nodded nervously, her violet eyes darting around. The crowd pressed close, traders shouting, children running, smells of strange food and burning oils filling the air. But already she could sense the danger. Armored guards slipping into the market, their eyes scanning, their weapons ready. "They're here," she whispered, her voice trembling. The human gave the faintest nod, his hand never leaving the spear hidden under his cloak. "Stay with me," he said firmly. They pushed through the crowd, weaving between stalls of glowing fruit and cages filled with squawking alien birds. The girl knew these streets better than him, and for the first time she felt useful. "There's a side path ahead," she whispered. "Behind the dye cellars. It leads to the undercanals." The human trusted her instantly, changing direction without question. But the guards were faster than expected. One of them spotted the girl's silver skin flashing from under the cloak. "There!" He shouted. The market erupted in panic, citizens screaming as the guards charged, knocking stalls aside, spilling fruit and glass across the ground. The girl gasped, clutching the human's arm. He pulled her sharply, running, their boots slamming against the stone streets. Behind them, the sound of armored pursuit thundered closer. The chase had begun. They darted into the narrow path she had promised, the walls pressing tight around them, dripping with dyes and stained cloth hanging low. The smell of chemicals burned their lungs, but it bought them seconds. The guards struggled to push through the mess, shouting orders, their heavy armor slowing them in the cramped space. The girl coughed, her eyes watering. "This way, faster," she urged, pulling him by the hand. Her chains clattered, but her movements were sharp. Practiced, she had run these alleys before. Only that time, always trying to hide, never to fight. They burst out of the alley into a lower district of the city, where the lights were dimmer and the air smelled of smoke and oil. Crumbling buildings leaned against each other, and canals of black water glistened under weak lanterns. This was where the poor lived, where the throne's reach was weakest, but even here the horns could be heard, and whispers followed them through every shadow. "They're looking for us everywhere," the girl whispered. Fear rising in her voice, the human's face hardened. "Then we need a place they won't look." Before she could answer, a voice hissed from the shadows, "Here, come here!" A cloaked figure waved them into a ruined doorway. The girl hesitated, her heart pounding. This could be a trap. But the guard's footsteps echoed closer. No time left to think. The human pushed her gently inside, his spear ready, his eyes sharp. The cloaked figure pulled them into the dark, closing a heavy plank across the doorway. "You're brave, human," the stranger whispered, his face hidden. "But foolish, defying the throne is death." The girl shrank back, clutching the cloak tighter. "Why help us then?" the human asked coldly. The figure chuckled, a bitter sound. "Because your defiance has stirred the city, and some of us have waited a long time for someone to spit in the throne's face." He lit a small lantern, revealing his scarred features, an alien of the same kind as the guards, but older, his eyes filled with anger. "I was chained once too," he said, showing the faint scars on his wrists. "I escaped, but never forgot." The girl's breath caught, her eyes wide, another like her, but free. "Can you help us?" she asked softly, her voice desperate. The man nodded slowly. "I can show you a path through the undercanals, but be warned. The hunters will follow, and not all who live in the shadows are friends." Before they could answer, a crash echoed outside. The guards had tracked them, smashing through stalls and walls, shouting threats. The stranger's eyes narrowed. "No more time, follow me." He pulled open a hidden trapdoor, leading down into the undercanals. The human helped the girl climb down, then dropped after her. The tunnels below were wet, narrow, and filled with the stench of sewage and oil. The sound of rushing water mixed with distant echoes of footsteps, hunters already on their trail. They ran through the darkness, splashing in the shallow water, their breaths harsh and heavy. The stranger led with surprising speed, twisting through turns and hidden doors, but the girl could feel it. Every time they thought they gained distance, the hunters closed in again. It was as if the city itself wanted to trap them at last. They reached a chamber where the canal widened, lit faintly by glowing crystals on the walls. The stranger stopped, breathing hard. "This is as far as I can take you," he said grimly. "Beyond this, you must find your own path." The girl's heart sank. "Why?" she asked. The man looked at her, his scarred face solemn. "Because if I go further, they'll know who I am, and then all I've built here will burn." The human's jaw clenched, but he nodded with respect. "You've done enough," he said firmly. The stranger gave a faint smile, then vanished back into the shadows. Leaving them alone, the girl shivered. Pulling the cloak tight, her voice shook. "They won't stop hunting us." "Not ever." The human looked at her, his eyes steady. "Then we'll keep running," he said, "until we stop running, and they start fearing us." Above them, the horn still wailed. The chase across the city was far from over, but now in the dark of the undercanals, a fire had been lit in both their hearts. The tunnels of the undercanals grew quieter the deeper they went. The roar of horns and armored footsteps faded, replaced by the steady drip of water echoing through the dark. The girl's chains rattled softly with each step, the sound haunting in the silence. She clutched the cloak tighter, her violet eyes glancing nervously at the human walking beside her. For hours, neither of them spoke. The human moved with steady focus, his spear always ready, his eyes sharp. He did not complain, did not rest, only pressed forward as if the weight of the world sat on his shoulders. The girl's heart twisted. He had risked everything for her, a stranger, a slave who was supposed to be nothing more than a reward. Why? At last her voice broke the silence, soft and unsure. "Why did you do it?" she asked. Her words echoed in the damp air, fragile, almost swallowed by the dark. The human glanced at her but did not stop walking. "Do what?" She hesitated, her throat tight. "Refuse me. Fight for me. You could have taken me, no one would have questioned you, no one would have stopped you. Why risk your life?" The human slowed, finally stopping near a broken wall where faint crystals glowed blue. He leaned on his spear, his face shadowed but calm. "I told you already," he said, "because no one deserves chains." The girl shook her head, her silver hair falling across her face. "You don't understand. I was born into chains. I was raised to believe I was nothing. Everyone told me I was worthless, only useful as a prize. A gift, an object. Even if you freed me, I don't know what I am without the chains." Her voice cracked, her chest tight, tears welled in her violet eyes. Though she tried to hide them, the human crouched slightly, lowering his voice so it was gentle. "You are not worthless," he said firmly. "You are alive, you are thinking. You are speaking. No one who breathes is worthless." The words pierced her heart. No one had ever told her that before. Not once. Her whole life had been commands, punishments, silence. And now, here was someone who saw her not as a thing, but as someone. She looked at him with wide eyes, trembling. "You speak as if I matter," she whispered. "You do," he said simply, without hesitation. Her lips parted, her breath caught in her throat for the first time in years. Hope stirred inside her chest, fragile but real. She lowered her gaze, unable to hold his steady eyes any longer. Her cheeks warmed and her trembling slowed. They continued walking through the tunnels, but something had changed. The silence between them was no longer heavy, it was softer, filled with unspoken words. After a while she spoke again, her voice steadier. "My name. No one uses it anymore," she said quietly. "They only call me the prize or the gift, but my true name is Leora." The human nodded slowly. "Leora," he repeated, testing the sound of it. Her heart fluttered strangely, hearing her name spoken. Truly spoken, not spat with disgust, not whispered with mockery, spoken with respect. "Yes," she whispered, almost smiling. "That is my name." The human finally gave his name too. "I am Daniel," he said, his voice low but strong. She looked at him, memorizing it. Daniel, the one who refused chains, the one who gave her hope. As they pressed deeper into the tunnels, Leora began to speak more slowly, carefully. She shared pieces of her past, how she had been taken from her family as a child, how the nobles raised her in cages, showing her only to crowds, how she had been given to warriors again and again, never as a person, only as a prize. Her voice shook as she spoke. But Daniel listened without interrupting, his face steady, his eyes filled with quiet anger. When she finished, she looked at him, afraid. "Do you think I am broken?" she asked, her voice trembling. Daniel shook his head. "No," he said firmly. "I think you are stronger than all of them. You survived what they wanted to destroy. That makes you stronger than me, stronger than anyone who ever held you in chains." Her breath caught, her chest tight. No one had ever called her strong before. Her whole life she had been told she was weak, fragile, dependent. But Daniel's words lit something inside her she didn't know she had. Maybe she was more than they told her to be. They found a small hollow in the tunnel where they could rest. Hidden from the hunters above, Daniel leaned against the wall, his spear across his knees while Leora sat close. The cloak wrapped around her for the first time. She didn't feel the chains cutting her skin. She almost forgot they were there. The silence between them was different now. Not the silence of strangers, but of companions. Two souls bound not by chains, but by choice. Before closing her eyes, Leora whispered softly, "Thank you, Daniel." Her voice carried both fear and hope, but most of all, trust. And Daniel, staring into the dark tunnel ahead, only gave a small nod. He would protect her, no matter the cost. Above, the horn still echoed faintly. The city still hunted them. But in that quiet moment deep in the tunnels, something more powerful was born. The bond of trust, the seed of something that could change everything. The city above was restless. All night the horns had screamed, calling hunters and guards to search every alley, every tunnel, every home. But louder than the horns were the whispers. "Did you hear? The human refused the prize. They say he broke the ceremony of chains, and he said no one deserves chains." For the first time in generations, the throne's perfect order cracked. The ceremony had always been sacred, unchallenged, unquestioned. Now, one act of defiance spread like fire in dry grass. In the dark tunnels, Daniel and Leora moved carefully. They could hear the city above buzzing like a storm. Shouts, marching boots, doors being broken down, but beneath the fear, Leora noticed something else. People were talking. People were thinking. Daniel's words had planted seeds. As they crept through the shadows, they passed hidden workers, slaves cleaning the water channels, beggars crouched in corners, forgotten faces who lived in silence. Those faces lit up when they saw Daniel and Leora. One whispered, "It's him." Another whispered, "The one who refused." Leora lowered her voice as they walked. "They know you," she whispered in awe. Daniel frowned. "I didn't want fame. I just wanted you free." But Leora shook her head softly, her violet eyes shining. "You don't understand. You gave them hope. You gave me hope." By dawn, the rebellion began to show itself. It started small. Workers refusing to move when guards ordered them. Beggars shouting, "No chains," before being struck down. But every act, no matter how small, added to the fire, and the throne felt it. From the palace, the alien leader sent more soldiers into the streets. "Find the human. Kill him, bring the girl back in chains," he roared. But even his soldiers looked uneasy. His voice sounded less like power and more like fear. Meanwhile, Daniel and Leora found shelter in a ruined temple, its roof broken, its walls covered in moss. The quiet there gave them a moment to breathe. Daniel sharpened the stolen spear while Leora sat beside him, her cloak wrapped tight for the first time. She felt the warmth of morning light on her skin without chains pulling her down. But silence didn't last long. A group of cloaked figures appeared from the shadows, their steps careful but bold. Daniel rose instantly, spear ready. "Stay back," he warned. But one of the figures raised his hands, showing empty palms. "We are not your enemies," he said. "We are those who have waited for this day." Leora's eyes widened. "Waited?" she asked softly. The man nodded, pulling down his hood, revealing scars around his wrists, the same scars as hers. "Slaves, freed or escaped, hiding in the city. We have dreamed of ending the chains, but we had no spark. You gave it to us." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "You want rebellion?" The man nodded again. "The throne has ruled with fear too long. Your refusal showed us fear can be broken. The people are ready, but they need a leader." Daniel shook his head firmly. "I'm no leader. I'm just a man who wouldn't take a slave. But the cloaked figures smiled. That is why they will follow you. Leora's heart pounded as she watched him. She wanted to speak, to tell him he was already leading her, leading others by his example. But before she could, the sound of horns grew louder, closer. The guards had found the temple. The cloaked rebels moved fast, drawing hidden blades and makeshift weapons. Daniel tightened his grip on the spear, his jaw set. "Looks like you get your rebellion sooner than you thought," he said. The doors of the temple shattered as armored guards poured in. Shouting, the rebels rushed forward, clashing with them. The air filled with the sound of steel, the crackle of energy weapons, the cries of battle. Daniel fought like a storm, each strike sharp, each movement fierce beside him. Leora ducked behind a broken pillar, her heart racing. But she refused to cower this time. She grabbed a fallen dagger, her chains rattling, her hands shaking. For the first time, she wanted to fight, not just for herself but for Daniel, for freedom. The battle raged, rebels fell, guards fell. Blood stained the temple floor. But through it all, Daniel's presence burned like fire. His defiance was no longer just words, it was action. Finally, as the last guard dropped, silence fell over the temple, broken only by the rebels' heavy breaths. The leader of the cloaked group stepped forward, his face fierce but hopeful. "The rebellion begins tonight," he declared. "And you, human, whether you want it or not, are its symbol." Daniel looked at Leora. Her violet eyes met his, filled with fear and hope both. He sighed, lowering his spear slightly. "I didn't come here to lead a war," he said quietly. "But maybe war has already come to me." The rebels cheered softly. Raising their weapons, the spark had become a flame. And as the city above prepared to hunt them harder than ever, deep in the shadows, the first true rebellion was born. The city was no longer calm. Fires burned in the distance. Smoke rising above the towers, the rebellion had begun to spread. Small sparks in alleys, angry shouts in markets, slaves refusing to bow, citizens daring to whisper. And at the center of it all stood Daniel, the human who had spoken against chains, and Leora, the girl who was once only a prize. The rebels moved quickly through the undercanals and ruined temples, growing in number every hour, but so did the enemy. The throne had unleashed its elite guard, towering armored soldiers, their weapons burning brighter than fire, their orders clear: kill the human, take the girl alive. By nightfall, the rebels gathered near the great square. It was there the throne planned to make its stand. Banners of the old order hung heavy in the torchlight, and at the center stood the alien leader, crowned in bone and steel, his staff glowing with power. When Daniel and Leora stepped into the square with the rebels behind them, silence fell. Thousands of eyes watched, from rooftops, from windows, from the shadows of broken stalls. It was no longer just a fight. It was the decision of the city's future. The leader's voice boomed across the square. "Human, you dare bring rebellion into my city? You dare poison my people with lies of freedom?" He slammed his staff against the stone, sparks of energy cracking the ground. "Bow now, and I may grant you a quick death. Refuse again, and both you and the girl will suffer for eternity." Daniel stepped forward, spear in hand. His voice was steady, carrying through the silence. "I will not bow. Not to chains. Not to you. Not ever." The crowd gasped, whispers rushing like waves. The leader snarled, pointing his staff at Leora. "She belongs to me. She is my gift to give, my prize to show. Without the chains, she is nothing." Leora trembled, her heart racing, but this time she did not shrink. She stepped forward beside Daniel, her voice shaking but clear. "My name is Leora," she said, her violet eyes blazing. "I am not your prize. I am not your gift. I am free." The words struck the crowd like thunder. For years, no slave had dared speak so openly. Now, before thousands, she had claimed herself. The leader roared in rage, raising his staff. "Kill them!" he ordered. The elite guards charged, their weapons blazing. The rebels met them head-on, steel clashing, fire lighting the night. The square became a storm of battle. Screams and sparks. Daniel fought at the front, his spear moving like lightning, striking down one guard after another. Each blow carried not just strength but purpose. He wasn't fighting for victory alone. He was fighting for a future without chains. Leora, though trembling, refused to hide. She picked up a fallen blade, her chains rattling. Her strikes clumsy but fierce, every swing was a declaration. She was no longer a silent prisoner. She was part of the fight. The battle raged until at last Daniel faced the alien leader. The crowd fell into silence again, watching as the two locked eyes. "You could have had honor," the leader hissed. "You could have had power. But you chose weakness." Daniel shook his head, raising his spear. "No, I chose freedom." Their clash shook the square, sparks flying as staff struck spear. The leader's blows cracked the stone, but Daniel refused to fall with each strike. The rebels shouted louder. The crowd leaned closer. It was no longer just a fight between two men. It was freedom against chains. Finally, with a roar, Daniel twisted the spear, breaking the staff in two. The leader staggered, his crown slipping, his face pale with shock. Daniel pressed the spear against his chest. "This ends tonight," he said. The leader collapsed, his crown falling onto the broken stone. For a moment, silence filled the square. Then slowly voices rose. "No chains." One shouted, "No chains." Another cried. Soon the entire square echoed, "No chains! No chains!" The banners of the throne were torn down, trampled into the dirt. The guards who survived threw down their weapons. Fleeing into the night, and for the first time in memory, the city stood without masters. Leora dropped the broken blade, her chest heaving, tears in her violet eyes. She looked at Daniel, her voice trembling. "You did it," she whispered, but Daniel shook his head, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "No, Leora, we did it." The crowd swarmed around them. Not to chain, not to claim, but to cheer. The ceremony of chains was dead. The ceremony of freedom had been born, and in the middle of it all, a human and an alien girl stood side by side. No longer master and prize, no longer stranger and slave, but allies, companions, and symbols of a new world. The choice had been made, not chains, but freedom.